Well, good evening. My name's Frank. This is the Storytime Podcast. Today is October 28th, 2025. It's 8:11 p.m., and this is my fourth take of this podcast. I've been re-recording it a few times and trying to get the right pace. I re-listened to it and I realized, I'm talking way too fast. I gotta chill out. Because you guys are probably listening to this. You could be listening to this at home. You could be driving. I gotta take it easy. Because, it's gotta be listenable. It's gotta be good. So, this is story time. I'm Frank. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm gonna be talking about my experience in game development. It's something I was always passionate about. The first games I played when I was a kid were like Age of Empires 1 and Putt Putt Travels Through Time and Freddy the Fish. Those are some real classics from the 90s. And I really enjoyed Diablo 2. I still play that now, even 25 years later. So I think those games really inspired me to be like, yeah, I want to try making a game sometime. And finally, they released some software in like '06 or '07 called Game Maker. And me and my friend John ended up getting it. And I'd play video games at his house all the time. And finally, he got the software and he's like, let's try making something. I was like, yeah, we should do that. So we made this game called Super Freaking Awesome Action Man. We called our game studio Munchy Crunchy Studios, and the uh, the intro animation, even though we never made it, but it would have been just a mouth, and then he like eats something, and then he smiles, and on his teeth it spells out Munchy Crunchy Studios. It was kind of gross, but it's kind of quirky at the same time. I don't know. Uh, so yeah, our first game, Super Freaking Awesome Action Man, was is like a side-scrolling shooter game. You play as Action Man and you shoot zombies and you use like a jetpack to fly around. And we used a jetpack because we couldn't figure out the physics of jumping. Like if you wanted to jump accurately, the character would have to go up and make an arc and then come down. But we just couldn't figure out how to do that. So we figured we'd work around it by just pressing the up arrow and you just go straight up and you can control it that way. And that cuts out a lot of the physics and like arc and those sorts of things. And that's what game development's all about, just figuring out the problems and working through it, because not everything's going to go perfectly. In fact, most things won't go perfectly, and that's kind of how art is in general. You have an idea and it meets reality, and then you have to contend with that. So anyway, it's a action side-scrolling zombie shooter, and the story of the game is pretty basic. You play as Action Man, and during 4th of July, they're firing all these fireworks, and then some evil scientist fires a biological missile that's like hidden amongst the fireworks, and it explodes and spreads all this stuff that makes everyone zombies. Which, if that really happened, that'd be pretty scary. And I don't know. I guess it's kind of smart to hide it amongst all the explosions, but it's also kind of just really scary. So yeah, I animated everything in Paint, so it was really basic, and I'd like draw a zombie, we'd save that, and then I'd gradually draw parts of the zombie missing with all this blood and stuff, and the animations would cut together so that gradually the zombie disintegrates as you shoot it. So it was pretty cool. I mean, it was pretty advanced. I'd never really worked with animation before, but I knew it was just, one frame at a time, change it each frame, and something will happen. And it was really fun and cool, and we worked on it for a few months and made, I don't know, 5 or 6 levels, and I made a few different characters. Some of them would shoot back at you, some would just walk towards you, and uh, we rendered some files of it, but I think they got deleted eventually, or his computer got a virus, so we never actually released it. But that was cool. That was like middle school, so '06 or '07, I think. Let's see. The next game we worked on, that was called Warbands Rising. It was way too ambitious, but we were eager. We were in middle school, maybe starting high school, and our our vision just exceeded our grasp, for whatever they say. And it was going to be this massively multiplayer online game where you get together with friends and form a war band, and you could build a town by harvesting wood and stuff from the forest. And once you make a town, you like fortify it and then attack other towns or fight other players. So there are all these elements that ended up in future games like Minecraft and Fortnite. And I feel like we were pretty ahead of our time, but at the same time, we just didn't have the software skills or the animation skills to put it all together and actually make it. So we told all our friends, and we're like, yeah, we're going to make this MMO. And they're like, really? How are you going to do that? And it's just, we're gonna figure it out. So I animated some, or we shot some reference in his garage, and he'd like swing a sword around. And my friend John, he was the guy I collaborated with. He really emphasized how he wanted to make the medieval combat accurate, because like a lot of movies and stuff, the people would swing their swords around in all this dramatic way, but he said really you got to keep the shield up and just sort of swing from behind the shield and just be really conservative in that way, because when you think about it, you want to keep the shield up the whole time and just protect yourself. And I guess we were really using this what's it called? I think it's called the SCA, the Society of Creative Anachronism, something like that. They they do these live what's it, not performances, but like tournaments of real people in full suits of armor with full contact, like hitting each other with essentially batons. And I imagine it's pretty painful, but it's essentially as realistic as you can get without using real swords. And so we use that as kind of reference, and then we'd shoot stuff in his garage of him swinging a sword around, and then I'd take screenshots from the reference footage and try to match it frame by frame with the 3D character. And ultimately, the animations didn't really turn out that well, and it's really hard to work in 3D animation. But later, I went to school for it and figured out how to actually do it. But this was 5 or 6 years before that, so we were just doing the best we could, just shooting stuff in his garage, putting things together on his computer, and ultimately, we only made a small like 3D map of is like a 2D what's it called, like grass texture across a small plane, and then a little 3D house on top of it. And that was the whole map. I mean, hardly massively multiplayer or anything. We didn't even know how to do the multiplayer element, but I would just tell him ideas, and he'd say, yeah, I can program that. I can program that. And I don't think he could, but I don't know. I appreciate the enthusiasm, and we were just really ambitious with it, but just couldn't figure it out. So I guess the only thing I regret about that experience was just telling everyone, oh, we're making this MMO. It's going to be amazing. And then they're like, well, what happened to it? So yeah, that happened. But then several years later, I started animation school to major in 3D animation, and so I started studying 3D animation and 2D animation, and now I still work in stop motion, and I'm sure you've seen some of those footage that I've shot, and I plan to make more, definitely. But uh, so yeah, once I'm in animation school, summer rolls around, is summer 2014, I guess, and I was looking for internships or any kind of job experience, and I found an ad on Craigslist for a game developer in the area, and they were looking for a writer. So even though I was mostly interested in animation, I figured any way to get into game development, I'm for it. So I signed up as a writer, met the director, and it was all being made in his house. Like we didn't have like an office or anything. We just operated out of his garage. In fact, his main house was where his wife was operating her real estate company. So it was like two companies in one house, so it's a little crowded. But we mostly worked in the garage, so we didn't really like run into each other or anything unless we had to go inside to use the bathroom. So, and it was just a really low budget kind of thing because all the employees were technically interns, so we weren't paid or anything, and we all signed up for that just to get experience. We needed to put something on our resume. So let's see. I go there, we do an interview. He introduces me to the team, and everyone's a bit older than me. I think they're all recent college grads, and I think some of them even had game experience prior, so that was pretty impressive. So I talked to them, and yeah, he just he set up all these bar stools for this long desk on the side of his garage, integrated into the wall, and he had a bunch of computers, and each of us worked on our own thing. We had some concept artists, we had some animators, we had like programmers, and I was the writer. So the story of the game was that a second Earth appears next to the real Earth, and so you play as this like action agent kind of character who goes to the second Earth to figure out what's going on. And yeah, so my job was to figure out like how to implement his story outline and make dialogue and everything that connects each level so that everything connects in a cohesive way, which is pretty difficult when you think about it. So I wrote a bunch of drafts. I'd make like 1 or 2 drafts per week. I only worked there like 2 or 3 days a week, 3 to 4 hours a day. So it's pretty part time. And I worked there for the summer of 2014 and made a bunch of drafts, and he gave me a lot of feedback. And I came back the next year during the summer, which would have been summer 2015, and I found out all my drafts ended up getting scrapped. I guess he didn't really like it, so I had to start over. But we kept the outline and we kept all the assets, and the game was developed in the Unity engine, so we used a lot of pre-made assets, but also the team made a few more 3D models, and I think 3 or 4 of the maps were actually like original, but a lot of them were just pre-made assets. So I think nowadays you call that asset flipping, which is a bit, I don't know, maybe derogatory. I don't know. It saved money though, and I think for the time, which was 2015, 2016, it looked like a pretty good game. It wasn't like top tier, but it also wasn't terrible either. So let's see. So I wrote the script, and then when we used the script, we shot with live action actors. So it's called FMV, full motion video. That was big in the 90s. If you ever played like Command and Conquer Red Alert and Red Alert 2, and all the cutscenes had live actors. Although, honestly, I wish I'd been there when they shot the footage because they just weren't very directed well, and I think they just shot them on their webcams. Like, I wish I'd been there to, like, direct them, give them costumes or something, just really to put it all together. But I don't know. I guess I was just too busy with college or just not interested or something. So ultimately, I wish I'd worked harder on it. And one of the actors they hired for it, well, hired is a loose term. I don't think anyone was paid, but she was also a cam girl. So I looked her up. I was like, is this real? And yeah, sure. Her website, she was just naked and stuff. So that was embarrassing. But, I guess anyone can get in. So anyway, so they shot that, and I ended up doing some animation because they needed a animation for a boss character, and I think I made that a little too fast. I have a tendency of rushing things, and probably rushing this podcast a little bit. Honestly, I should slow down. But let's see. Yeah, I made the animation in like an hour or two, and unfortunately, I didn't shoot reference. I should have done that, and I made it, and then I showed the director, and he was like, "Oh, that was pretty fast," and so I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right," and so I like kept working on it, but I should have put more effort in because looking back and seeing the gameplay, I can see my animation, and I feel like there were things I didn't quite perfect about it, so I definitely should have put more time into it, and that's kind of a unifying criticism I'd say of that whole game development let's see, my time at that company. I mean, because we never had like an all hands meeting. Like we'd all have lunch together and we'd all chit chat and stuff, but it's mostly small talk. It wasn't like, how's the game going and we should implement this. We shouldn't go this direction. It was just a ton of faith in the director and not really any feedback. And I think that's one thing you need to remember when you're doing game development is it's a collaborative effort, and you need to implement feedback from everyone who's involved. Even if you're not directly influencing the story, you need to get feedback and just be like, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong, we need to work on this part. And we just didn't really have that. It was just the director making all the decisions. And I think we had like too much faith in him because he'd had previous experience working on like The Force Unleashed and maybe Lego Indiana Jones, and those I think those are both LucasArts games, before LucasArts got absorbed by Disney. So those were all like popular games or just real games, and we didn't really have that experience. So we were like, he must know what he's talking about. But yeah, we should have just had more, what do you call it, feedback and collaboration. I think was lacking. So the game eventually got released in March of 2016, and I was only there for summer 2014 and summer 2015, so I wasn't there very often. But I still contributed to it, and my name ended up in the credits, which is cool. And not many people can say they worked on a Wii U game. It came out for Steam and Wii U, and just a few months after it was released, he implemented a lot of feedback. The director, I mean, all the people who played it were giving criticisms like, it's crashing here, I can't load this part, and so they went back and like fixed things. And so I think the Steam version was probably working pretty well. And from what I've read, they sold like 2,500 copies, but I can't be sure how accurate that number is because the director gave us all like CD keys, which is like a code you put in to unlock the game so you don't have to buy it. And if we gave out all those keys to everyone, then that probably would have accounted for like a majority of the quote sales. So, and we were all interns, so we never really saw any like percentage of the profits or anything, which is unfortunate. But we're just happy to have something on our resume. So it didn't sell that well, and it was released in March 2016 for Steam and Wii U, and then unfortunately it was taken off Steam in sometime in 2020. So it was only out for about 4 years, and I don't know if the Wii U version even got if it even got like updates or anything. So that might have been a bit broken. Although one unique thing about the Wii U version is you could use the second screen on the Wii controller, the Wii U controller, as a like a thermal vision. So if the level you're in is really dark or you're against a invisible enemy, you can use that screen and like find them. So that's kind of a fun gimmick, but otherwise, it was pretty similar to the Steam version. One thing I really remember about developing it was we were all in his garage, so it'd get kind of hot in the summer, and I feel like every time I walked in, he was playing the game on the Wii U dev kit, and he was always playing the Jeep level because there's a couple levels, or no, it was a Humvee where you drive a Humvee around, and yeah, we just did so much in that game. I mean, it was mostly a first-person shooter, but there's also levels where you get to drive a vehicle, which is pretty cool, and those were pretty big levels too. So like all the other games I worked on, it was just maybe a little too ambitious for what we could accomplish. But I'm still proud I worked on it. It was a good experience. Everyone was really friendly, and I still follow a lot of those people on LinkedIn, and they're doing really well. I think some of them are working at Ubisoft and other big game companies, and so it's just cool to see that they're still doing well and have got pretty good jobs and stuff. So I'm just proud I got to work on it. I can tell people I worked on a Wii U game, which is cool, and that was all in college, so I was like 22, 23. So yeah, it was a good experience, and I'm glad I did it. And if you want to see it, it's called Chasing Dead, and even though you can't buy it on Steam, there's a lot of Let's Plays on YouTube that probably won't be taken down for a while. One I really like is by this channel called Super Best Friends Play. They broke up in 2018, but since the game came out in 2016 and the channel's still around, you can watch it. They made this series that was about 6 or 7 episodes long, and each episode is about 30 to 45 minutes, and they play the whole game, so that's like 3 or 4 hours total. And even though they really tear into it and criticize it a lot, I really get a kick out of watching it and just remembering, being on the other side and seeing how everything was put together, and ultimately how things there wasn't really much cohesion, like I'd said. And so, but I still get entertained by it, and I think it's fun to watch and stuff. And they're just saying like, "Oh, this game is so broken," or "This dialogue is terrible." I'm just like, "Yeah, well, we did the best we could." So I don't know. It was a good experience. I'm proud I worked on 3 games before even graduating college. So yeah, well, I hope you like the story, and look out for more podcasts in the future. And have a good night. I'm Frank, signing off.